Los que labran la tierra son el pueblo escogido por Dios.
Thomas Jefferson believed that those who tilled the soil were the backbone of the country, and that the future of the Republic should be a nation of independent farmers spreading across the continent. But in 1800, the U.S. ended at the Mississippi, and to the west stood the territories of France and Spain. Dreaming of a French New World Empire, Napoleon had acquired the vast Louisiana Territory from Spain. Control of the Mississippi River by the powerful French alarmed the United States, for the mighty Mississippi River linked the nation's western farmers to the world. French control of the port of New Orleans gave them a stranglehold on the United States frontier economy. But Napoleon's dream of a Western empire quickly turned into a nightmare. In the French colony of Haiti, Toussaint Louverture led a fierce rebellion of former slaves against French troops who died like flies from yellow fever. Back in France, Napoleon needed fast cash to support his wars of conquest in Europe. When American Minister James Monroe offered to purchase New Orleans for $10 million, Napoleon offered to sell the United States the entire Louisiana Territory, about 828,000 square miles, for just $5 million more. Nothing in the Constitution gave the president the power to purchase new lands, but Jefferson made the deal, doubling the size of the United States. In 1804, the president sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore and chart this vast, unknown territory. Departing from St. Louis, Missouri, Lewis and Clark headed west into lands few Europeans had ever seen. But they didn't go unprepared. They were trained like astronauts, briefed on things they might see and experience, told to do experiments, and record everything that seemed important in their exploration of this vast and unknown world. Lewis and Clark met more than 50 tribes, ranging from the peaceful Mandan Indians and the mighty Teton Sioux to the Shoshone relatives of their guide, Sacagawea. The Native Americans helped them through their travels, provided food, animal skin, and fur clothing, and advice on how to continue their trek westward. In the continent's interior, they discovered an unimagined world of natural wonder. Huge herds of bison, elk, and antelope roaming an inland ocean of grass, rivers teeming with fish, canyons of breathtaking beauty, and clouds of Montana mosquitoes so thick they could drive a man crazy. Lewis and Clark pushed westward and eventually reached the Pacific Ocean, where they established a camp and lived among the Chinook people and other coastal tribes of the Pacific Northwest. 2 years later, they returned east to Washington, D.C.
After the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1803, there were marvelous accounts and descriptions of the glories out there of the West. People were learning about the Rocky Mountains and the fabulous rivers and the Great Plains. And it was a huge continent, they learned. An awful lot of land there. It seemed ripe for the taking.
Their glowing descriptions of abundant, fertile land and their detailed maps provided the signposts for a boom of westward migration. Some of the first whites to follow their lead were mountain men who trapped furs for distant markets, traded with Indians, and charted the best paths for movement across the continent. These were tough men, like Jedediah Smith, who found the South Pass through the Rocky Mountains. When his ear was nearly ripped off by the teeth of a grizzly bear, Smith had one of his men sew the ear back on. A few days later, Jedediah was back on the trail. Needing the cooperation and help of Western Indians, many trappers took Indian women for their wives, a practice encouraged by Indian leaders to cement alliances and trade with the whites. These paintings by George Catlin were some of the first glimpses Americans had of the people of the Western tribes.